Closed captioning for Justice and Law Weekly is provided in part by the Clifford Law Offices in support of quality public television for the Chicago area.
I'm Bob Clifford, President of the Chicago Bar Association. Welcome to another edition of the Chicago Bar Association's Justice and Law Weekly. On March 20th, 2012, citizens across Illinois will have the opportunity to vote in the judicial primary. There are 127 candidates seeking elections to vacancies at all levels of the judiciary. Most people know little or nothing about these candidates and have no idea where to find information about their qualifications to serve on the bench. Judges must know the law, apply the law fairly, have the right temperament, and be independent from any influence in making their decisions. Judges make serious decisions affecting the lives of hundreds of people each day in Cook County. It is important for voters to take the time to learn about the qualifications of these judicial candidates. My guests today know a great deal about what it takes to be a good judge. Timothy Evans is Chief Judge of the Circuit Court of Cook County, and the Cook County Circuit Court is the largest court system in Illinois and one of the largest unified court systems in the world. Judge Evans supervises over 400 judges who serve over 5 million residents in Cook County. Edward Austin is a partner with the law firm of McNamara and Austin. He practices in the area of criminal defense matters, and he is also the chair of the Chicago Bar Association Judicial Evaluation Committee. Welcome, Judge Evans, and welcome, Ed.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for having us here. It's a very timely program for us, given the number of people that are seeking the right to serve our community as judges. Why is it such a popular thing for people to be doing, Judge?
Well,
what do you guys got going over there?
We have a marvelously talented group of people who are interested in being a part of the third branch of our government. They will represent the people in this community in the judiciary, and they want to do a good job. They're committed to justice, and they want the people to know the qualifications that they have. You know, they make quite a sacrifice to leave their practices and to come to do their duty on behalf of the people we're talking about. And it's interesting that you're absolutely right. Very few people take the time to really know about their qualifications and their capabilities, and this is a marvelous opportunity for them to learn more about it.
You know, as a citizen and as a bar leader, I've often felt frustrated at the fact that when I get to the ballot and I claim to be, you know, informed about this stuff, I get to that ballot and I see all these names, and you don't know who the heck to vote for or how they are qualified to do the work. Is there any minimum level of qualification that someone has to have to seek election as a judge?
Oh yes, of course. They have to be lawyers. In most instances, we insist that they have some experience in the court. They are obviously people who are eligible to vote themselves, and we hope that they are committed to the process so that justice can prevail. But you're right, the only way a democracy can work well is to have that democracy be well informed, and for people to be able to choose the best and the brightest, they have to know what the experience of a given judge might be, or a judicial candidate. Some of these candidates who we're going to be discussing have served as judges already, and they're moving up to another level. Right. Some have never had an opportunity to serve as a judge, but they have a broad base of experience as lawyers.
Right. And Ed, that's where your work for the Bar Association seems to come into play. Tell the people who are watching about the Judicial Evaluation Committee of the Chicago Bar Association. What do you do?
Well, I guess you could say we do the legwork for people. Our goal is to inform voters about particular judicial candidates' experience and qualifications. Our committee is comprised of 20 or so volunteer lawyers. We start the process with any judicial candidate submits their questionnaire to us. They fill out a very detailed questionnaire listing references, work experience, education, and so forth. We have investigators assigned to follow up with those references, call other references. Then the candidate comes before a committee for a hearing, and we decide whether or not that person is qualified to hold a judicial post.
Is there, given what Judge Evan told us, is there any minimum criteria or minimum experience level that the law requires someone to have in order to run as a judge? And if the answer to that is no, which I think it is there any minimum that the Bar Association at least tries to apply as a best practice or a threshold for people?
You're right, Bob. The answer is no in terms of any kind of legal qualification or minimum standard. But our committee, 12 years is the threshold level. We'd like to have a candidate who has at least 12 years of practicing experience, unless they're some otherwise exceptional due to another reason. In other words, maybe they had some work experience in the past prior to becoming a lawyer. And other than that, other than an exceptional quality, yeah, 12 years is our bottom line standard.
And is everyone qualified the same, if you will? I mean, at the risk of being patronizing, I know that Judge Evans has consistently been highly qualified as a category, versus someone that I know recently was found not recommended. And then there's something in between. Explain that.
We have 3 categories. Not recommended, those that obviously we feel aren't ready for the bench. Highly qualified, those that are exceptional. And then there's also the middle ranking, which would be qualified.
Right. And again, how many, we know that there are 127 candidates on the ballot. Do all of those candidates go through the process?
Actually, no. When someone files for a candidacy for a judicial post, we get that name and address. We send them a letter inviting them to appear before a committee. In fact, we follow up with a second letter. But this year, of the 127 we interviewed and screened, just over 100.
Okay. Judge, I recently saw a criticism of the party system, Democratic, Republican, as it relates to judicial elections. You've been in politics your whole life. You have served our community with such distinction as an alderman and in other positions. What's your take on where the party system in our democracy comes into play for judicial elections?
Well, you're right. In this state, we elect judges to serve, and I realize that the system that you're describing is certainly not a perfect system, but Abraham Lincoln once said that no man is good enough to represent another man without that man's consent. And so what we're talking about is the consent of the governed. Those who come out to vote are going to be governed by the decisions being made by the judges they vote for. And so we want them to have a voice, and you're right, in this particular state, most of the candidates run as either a Democratic candidate or a Republican candidate. Some are, of course, independent, and some are from other parties, but those are the 2 primary parties, and the parties, I'm sure, attempt to choose the best and the brightest to represent their particular party in a given election. But ultimately, no matter whether a person is a Democrat or a Republican or an independent, once one is elected to the bench, all politics is placed aside.
Right.
No decisions can be made based upon a political consideration. The only thing a judge can consider is the law and the facts that come in on that particular case, and the judge applies the law to the facts and makes a decision. We want the judiciary to be independent and free from political influence.
Right.
The only thing that the parties do is help a judge get elected, but once elected, the politics must be placed aside.
Yeah, you mentioned that word independence, independence of the judiciary. I mean, I have to say, as a lawyer who's practiced for, since the early 70s, what you just said is so true. Once they get elected, and our democracy has the party system. But once they get elected, they get above it, if you will.
Absolutely.
Ed, when your committee's evaluating candidates, does that subject of a report of lack of independence, or a report of a lack of good judgment or good temperament, or how do you, when you take a look at someone, even if they've been on the bench for a while, I'm sure you've found some that are not recommended. What does the committee do? What's it looking at?
We have a set of criterion that we actually look at. We look to someone's integrity, their legal knowledge and ability, their temperament, of course, and their experience. So those are some of the standards that we look to. And you're right, we can have high praise for some of those areas, and we can have criticism of some of those areas, and that's why we have candidates appear before our committee. If there are any criticisms, they answer those, and we bring those up with them.
And the people that come up for review, some of them have been on the bench, as I mentioned, and they are up for retention. Is that right? Do you evaluate retention judges?
That's correct. We also evaluate retention judges.
And Judge, could you explain to our viewers what the difference is between someone who's running to be elected, if you will, for the first time versus someone who's running to be retained?
Surely. For example, the judges who are running to become full circuit court judges are going to serve a 6-year term if they are elected. And if after that 6-year term they seek to continue on in that same position, they will run for retention, meaning they run on their own record. They don't run opposed by some other candidate in that particular retention race. That retention race won't be up for consideration until the general election. They are not running for retention in the primary. The primary is set up for someone to be given a chance to serve as a candidate in the general election itself. But retention will include an even longer list of candidates in that retention category. You'll have several candidates in the general election, and then you'll have candidates running for retention. So people who are elected in this primary will run in the general election, and they'll be joined by about 70 or 80 judges.
That many?
Yes, who will be running for retention. And once again, we need the Chicago Bar, we need all of the other bar associations to evaluate the candidates and spread the word about their capabilities. And we also, of course, depend upon the local news media to help us carry the load of recognition, trying to make certain that these candidates can present their credentials and have the public take the moment to review those credentials.
Right. I recently appeared in front of a judge who was an associate judge.
Yes.
What is an associate judge, and how does someone become an associate judge?
An associate judge is a judge who is elected not by the general public, but by circuit court judges who are themselves elected by the general public. And the associate judge serves for 4 years and then runs for retention once again by submitting his or her credentials to the full circuit court judges who vote for those judges for that 4-year retention race.
So those 400 judges that you supervise do vote for those individuals? Is that how that works, or is it an executive committee or something?
We have 411 judges. About a third of those judges are associate judges, and the 2/3 of the other judges are the full circuit court judges, and they are the ones who vote for the judges who are going to be called associate judges.
Right.
And there is one additional distinction. The associate judges make just a little bit less than the full circuit court judges earn.
How long have you been a judge, Your Honor?
About 20 years.
Isn't that exciting?
It is exciting.
I know, and I know you're excited. I mean, I've appeared in front of you on matters, and you always have a smile on your face, and you represent the people well, and it's just proud to be with you during a time like this, and it's proud that you're running our courthouse.
Well, I thank you for your kind compliment. It's public service, and I consider public service to be a high and noble undertaking. And
What's the biggest challenge being the chief judge and herding all these cats?
Well, you know, it may sound daunting, but it's a pleasure working with our colleagues. As I say, they are dedicated to the law. They're interested in urging people to bring their disputes to the court and not try to resolve those disputes in the street. They are dedicated public servants, and they make quite a sacrifice to do their job day in and day out. They have to put praise and criticism aside and do their jobs irrespective of whether it's a popular thing to do. So these are courageous individuals who step forward to be on the judiciary in this state.
By way of your background, as I recall, you didn't do criminal work as a lawyer, am I right?
Right. I was primarily on the civil side. And I chose that route primarily because in addition to being a practicing lawyer, I was a member of the city council, and we passed many of the laws that related to criminal activity. So I didn't want any conflict of interest, and so I stayed on the civil side primarily.
And Ed, you do criminal work. Could you tell us what your observation has been about the difference of appearing in front of a judge who is handling a criminal docket versus one who's handling a civil docket?
I've had a great experience with criminal judges, and I think a testament to their fairness and as Judge Evans pointed out, you know, their dedication to the law. In Cook County, there aren't that many jury trials in a relative sense. In other words, most cases are decided by a bench trial where the judge makes the decision whether someone's guilty or innocent, and I think that's a testament to their fairness and their even-handedness that they can make those decisions. I've had a very pleasant experience in the criminal court.
And the judges, Your Honor, they have to stay up on the law. I mean, lawyers have a responsibility from our Supreme Court to go to continuing legal education. Do judges need to do the same thing?
Oh, absolutely. The state of Illinois, through the Supreme Court, requires that we continue our commitment to education as well. And in fact, this year, all 900 of the judges who serve in this state, 411 of which, of course, are from Cook County, must commit to going to upgrade their educational pursuits. And we do this in two segments. About half of the judges went in January and the first part of February, and the other half of the judges will go in April. And we must be committed to continuing that educational pursuit. We do this, of course, throughout the year, and we also have regional seminars, we have local seminars that go with this annual commitment that I talked about, and it's a marvelous way for the judges to stay abreast of the law.
Yeah, and do, you know, listen, there are good lawyers, bad lawyers, sometimes I'm sure there are good judges, bad judges. The ones that don't do that continuing education, do you kind of get on them and beat them up a bit?
Well, we certainly have our methodology to make certain that judges are encouraged to stay abreast of the law. But in fairness to them, everybody who is listed as a judge in the state must take this time for upgrading their education. And in addition to that, we assign judges as mentors to mentor the newer judges coming in. We have separate educational pursuits for the new judges, for example, who will be coming in as a result of the primary and the general election that we've been talking about. That's separate and apart from the continuing legal education that I talked about. And so they go to judges school.
Sure.
We swear them in one day and they start judges school the very next day. So we leave nothing to chance. We want the public to receive justice in this county, and we're committed to it.
Ed, when the committee is evaluating a judge, does it look at his or her commitment to continuing education?
Of course.
Explain that.
On the questionnaire, we ask any candidate to list what continuing legal education they've gone through. One of the questions that we ask of most candidates is, how do you keep abreast of the law? How do you stay on top of this ever-changing field, and that's an important part of our consideration in factoring whether someone has the right legal ability, the legal knowledge to actually be a good judge.
Right. Is the with the primary coming up so quickly, is the work of the committee complete, or what's the status of what you're doing?
We're close. It's been a long journey. We started this process in August, and we will finish it up by this week. So we will have a full, complete list of all the candidates who are running and their qualifications according to our standards.
And what do you do with that? You keep it to yourself, or you go tell anybody about
That's
it?
the point of this whole thing. We get the word out. We're hoping to get the word out, and we have all of our findings, or will have, on the Chicago Bar Association website.
Right.
That's chicagobar.org. And we try to make it as easy as possible. We have, we call them the green books or the green sheets, and we have two different things. The first is a green guide. This is a more comprehensive list of all the candidates, what their qualifications are.
Hold that up to the camera that's on for you. There you go.
And how we've rated them.
Okay.
And it gives the detail. We don't only just say, hey, qualified, not recommended, or highly qualified. We actually give reasons to support those. But to make it easy, we have a little cheat sheet, so to speak, and that is something that you can bring into the polling booth. We want everyone to understand that they can bring this in and use this as a guide while they're voting and going down that long list that Judge Evans talked about. There are 127 names or you're going to have to go through, so this is important. Sit it right next to you in the voting booth.
And I think that's an important point to bring out, that whether it's by the media's published list or this list, that the voters have a right to bring in a list of these candidates, and that where they've made some predetermined decisions to vote one way or the other about a given candidate. Is that right?
Exactly. You're allowed to bring these in. We make it easy. You go to the website, click, print it, take it with you. And we want to hopefully spread the word. People know about it. They email this to their friends and family, and they email it to their friends and family, and they can bring it in.
Do you ever work with other bar groups in the evaluation process?
Yes, we have in the past, and we've tried to consolidate efforts on different elections, mainly retention elections for those. But for right now, for this election, we work just with the CBA.
Okay. Judge, there's been criticism, if you will, about the fact that in Illinois we elect judges, and there have been a couple of races in the past, particularly at the Supreme Court level, where there's been millions of dollars spent by the candidates and their supporters. Is there any support in your mind, or any reason to consider the argument that maybe judges ought to be appointed at some level as opposed to elected?
Well, you're absolutely right. No one has been able to come up with a perfect system, and there has been some criticism leveled at the election process, and people are taking a look at the appointive system. Some states have tried that. Some have tried it and backed away from it. Illinois is, I'm sure, continuing to review the system to make it more responsive to the needs of the community. Those who criticize the current system say that an appointive system might be better, where the governor of a state might make the appointment, or perhaps the Illinois Supreme Court might make the appointment, or a commission established by one of those two organizations might make the appointment. But those who criticize that say, well, fine, the appointive system will be great, but I want to be among those making the appointments.
Yeah, right.
Because, as you said, property rights and the rights of individuals are at stake here.
Right.
And
well, it gets very real in the courtroom.
it really does, and the public wants to be a part of the process. So if Illinois is able to come up with some innovative system that includes the rights of citizens that the Constitution seems to provide for, and at the same time causes us to have magnificent judges, we might set a precedent in the state of Illinois.
There was a story years ago about the governor of California saying that because he was in a position, Gray Davis, to appoint someone, to the Supreme Court, but he said to that person, by the way, if you change your views once you get up there, I want your letter of resignation. And that's the rub about appointment, isn't it?
You're absolutely right.
Go either way, but I mean, that's the bad thing.
Yeah, you would not be able to characterize a system like that as an independent system. And people rush to point out here in the state of Illinois that two of our past governors are going to be in jail themselves,
right?
incarcerated themselves. So there is no perfect system, but the system we have right now is worth pursuing. We're encouraging people to come out and vote for judges in that system. And if we can come up with a better system someday, we'll certainly let the public know what that is. But right now, they have an opportunity to have some input into the decision-making process, and they can help choose those who will judge them and help them resolve disputes that might take place in the future. We want them to be a part of that process. They have an excellent opportunity to do so. This system at least keeps them well informed.
Right.
And I would love to see a huge number of people come out to participate in the primary, taking advantage of these new opportunities.
Yeah. Speaking of that, is there ever a time that you've had an idea or two about how we get more people to really take a hard look at the judges who are up for election? I think I'm sad to say that I think the data show that 25 to 30% of the voters don't vote the judicial ballot. Yeah. How do we change that, Judge?
There's a huge drop-off. You're right. Most people come in to the ballot, they vote the top of the ballot, and the judicial races are typically at a lower level, and they tend not to do that. I would urge them to take advantage of this opportunity this time around. And yes, we could go to the religious community and other community organizations and try to encourage them to, in turn, encourage their residents and their friends to participate as well.
Well, time flies when you're having fun here, and you gentlemen have been so kind and gracious with your time. I'm very grateful for that. And so Ed Austin and Chief Judge Tim Evans, thank you for being with us today. Viewers, please vote for qualified judicial candidates on March 20th. You can access the green guide that Ed was showing and the pocket guide at www.chicagobar.org. I'm Bob Clifford. Thank you for watching the Chicago Bar Association's Justice and Law Weekly. Thank you.